Hey everyone, Ryan from the Rad Owners Forum here, back with another video. I know it's been a few weeks since I've published one. One of the main reasons for that is because we are down in Florida for the month, escaping the cold weather of Wisconsin. So we are without our Rad Power Bike, so not a whole lot of content around that. I have seen some Rad Power Bikes. Mainly there's a bike tour company here near Sarasota. If you Google search Endless Summer, I'll put just a short little video of them. They ride, it seems like almost every single night, checking out the sunsets on Siesta Key Beach. So that was really cool to see. We just happened to be on the beach when they were going by. Okay, now on to today's video. So a recent question that I received was someone who knew that they wanted an electric bike, knew that they wanted to go with the Rad Power Bike, but they weren't sure what model to buy. And so I wanted to do a video on the pros and cons of each model, at least from my perspective. Now I'm staying fairly high level because you can get very in the weeds with all the different models, some of the benefits and cons. For instance, some of these bikes might be better, like if it's a smaller bike, it might be better for a smaller person, but someone taller that might be a negative for them. So I tried to avoid some of those things. So let's jump to me going through the website, every single model, going through the pros and cons and what you might want to think about before you buy a Rad Power Bike. As a reminder, if you use my link in the description, when you order your Rad Power Bike, you will receive a $50 Amazon gift card, and I will receive one as well. So thanks for your support. Let's get to it. Just one thing before we get started. If it seems like I am biased towards the RadWagon, well, that is because I am. That is the bike we own. So let's get started. I'm going to go through the website in the order these bikes come up. So the first one is the RadRunner. That is the model that they released around September-ish of 2019. It weighs 65 pounds. For pros for this bike, you can see there the price starts at $12.99, so it is a cheaper price point. It has that built-in rack on the back, as you can see. So it is built to have a passenger or cargo, so that's great. And as we go through all of these bikes, you'll notice that there's two different motors. This is the Bafang geared hub motor, which the majority of the bikes have. So just note that as we go through, it is a higher torque motor. For cons on this bike, I have no LCD screen. All the other ones have an LCD screen. However, for $99, Rad now does sell that as an upgrade. So if that is of interest to you, you can see it is a rigid fork, no front suspension. It is a single speed. So I view that, I think that can be a pro for some people. I love the simplicity of that. Just depends on your terrain. I listed this as a con as not as common tire size. However, more e-bike manufacturers are having these size tires. I believe they're 20-inch tires. So I feel like in the past they might not have been as readily available. Obviously, you can order them from Rad. It's good to have the other options just if you're more price conscious and things like that. So one thing to just keep in mind. And then as you can see, the RadRunner is a bare bones bike stock. You can see that there's no fenders. They sell an extra pad for the rear rack here and pegs. That's like their passenger accessory kit or whatever. They have a cool little center console that goes in the middle of the bike, but all of those are going to cost extra. So great entry level price, and then you just end up paying a little bit more depending on what you want to add. And I mean, this bike I feel like a lot of e-bike manufacturers have a similar style design. It's kind of like an urban style bike. You can imagine if that seat was a little bit lower, this is kind of like a scooter style bike. So just something to keep in mind. It comes in two colors, black and green. I do really enjoy that green. All right, so let's move on to the RadRover. I think the one thing to note here is obviously you can see that it has a step through as an option. We're looking at the first model, the step through that was announced or first released in 2020. The step through version comes in at 71 pounds. The standard, which I'll show in just a second, comes in at 69 pounds. So again, very accessible. If you want the fat tire bike, it has, I believe it shows that's 10 inches shorter than the original RadRover for a standover height. So that makes it hugely accessible. I view this bike as best for off-road use out of all the models. I think it's also great for snow. Those extra wide tires are going to give you some stability. And then you can see it has the front suspension. And I think when we think about the cons here, it's, more on the accessory side. So like the rack, you have to pay a little bit additional, and you have a little bit more rolling resistance with the fat tires. So I think if you're going to be in the city, maybe the fat tire one isn't as well suited for you. But I know there's tons of people who just love the styling of the RadRovers, and it's kind of their flagship model that they've had for quite some time. And there's the RadRover 5, so 5th iteration of the bike. And these again have that the Bafang geared hub motor, which is going to give you a little bit more torque. So that's the RadRover. Now we'll go down to the RadWagon. This is what we own. You can see in description, if the term car replacement can be applied to anything, the RadWagon would be it. I echo that thought completely. I love it because it's the most versatile. It's a full size bike. So for pros, it has that built-in rack. So tons of room for cargo space, tons of room for a passenger. And we use that quite frequently. I've hauled driveway salt and ladders and all sorts of crazy things on the back of the bike, including my wife and I often ride it with the two of us. I just got the Maxi seat for it, so we can put our child in it this summer when the weather gets better. You'll notice that it does have a lower step, but I wouldn't call this a step through. So it is a little bit more accessible. It doesn't, it's not like the RadRover where it's completely high. So it's a little bit lower. So if that makes any difference for you. So the RadWagon has a direct drive motor, which comes with regenerative braking. So that I listed that as a pro. I wouldn't buy the bike because it has regenerative braking. I think it's just like an additional, like it's a nice to have when you're going down hills, things like that, and you're braking. You get a little bit extra. I wouldn't call it significant. On cons, I would say it's just, just given its length, it's a little bit harder to maneuver. So you just have to be a little bit more careful. It's got that long, the rack goes all the way, just past that rear tire. With the direct drive motor, has a lower torque than all the other models, except for the RadCity has the same model, and no front suspension. I think when we talk about suspension, some of these things can be you can make your ride a little bit more comfortable just by buying a little bit nicer seat and then a suspension seat post, which a lot of people opt for. Okay, let's move on to the RadMini. So the RadMini 4. When you talk about the RadMini, the number one benefit to this bike is that you can fold it. So these are great for people who throw them in the back of a trunk. You don't need a bike rack. You can bring them along for the weekend. A lot of folks I see will buy like a big Rubbermaid container that actually fits the bike, so then they can just grab it with the handles as opposed to kind of figuring out where to lift on the bike. So that's a great way. So just from that perspective, it's just a lot more mobile. I think if you're an RV or something like that, it's a great option. And obviously it comes in a step throughout. So that's another benefit, just accessibility wise. And I think the other thing is it has fat tires, so it gives you a little bit of the stability, a little bit more stability there. Again, I would say you can ride this off-road. It's probably not going to be quite as capable as, say, the RadRover, but you can definitely do it. And I think I haven't ridden, the only electric bike that I've really ridden is the RadWagon, but I imagine with some of these, with, for instance, the RadMini, it's just going to steer slightly different than perhaps like a full-size bike, so something to keep in mind. Definitely test ride if you can. For cons for this bike, again, the racks are going to be additional cost, and then just keep in mind the tire size. And then finally we get to the RadCity. So the RadCity also has a step-through option. You can see on the rear it has the integrated rack for cargo or child passenger, again with that seat I mentioned earlier. I think the RadCity is the most approachable bike if you are already used to a standard bike. You can see it looks very similar, just has the battery, motor already on it. Again, similar to the Wagon, it has that regenerative braking, and it does have this, the front suspension, so that's nice as well. And cons, I mean, the only thing I really put here is it has a lower torque than all the other models. Again, I don't think that's a big deal. It's just something to keep in mind. So I hope you enjoyed me kind of walking through the pros and cons of all of these, of all the models of Rad Power Bikes. Hope this kind of gives you a little bit, helps narrow down your search. I know when I first bought mine, I did quite a bit of research before I came onto the Wagon. And yeah, now I'm hoping to get another one. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to support what I'm doing with the Rad Owners Forum and some of the content that I'm producing, here's 3 easy ways that you can do so. Number 1, you can, if you're buying a Rad Power Bike, you can earn a $50 Amazon gift card. I will also receive one. There's a link in the description below, also on my website, radowners.com. Number 2, you can view our recommended accessories pages. This is a bunch of accessories for all the models of Rad Power Bikes. Recommended accessories from the community that I've compiled over the last year or so. So you can check that out, also link below. And third, obviously, you can just join the forum, become a member, ask questions, and share your experience with others. Thanks again for watching.